That's the end of Matthew 26. We're now in Matthew 27. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans on how to have Jesus executed. So they're planning on killing him. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pontius Pilate, the governor. At the time, Israel, along with many other territories in the area, was conquered and ruled by Rome. And because Rome was the rulers over them, Rome was the only one that had authority to put people to death. Now, the chief priests and the religious leaders wanted Jesus put to death, but they weren't allowed to do it. They had to convince Rome that Rome needs to execute Jesus. Now, when Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, one of the apostles with him for 3 years, when he saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. Earlier, he went out and said, what would you give me if I turned Jesus over to you? When they came to get him, people didn't know which one was Jesus, so they needed someone to point out to them which one was Jesus. And that was the kiss that he said, the man I kissed, that'll be it. So now he's remorseful because Jesus, they're trying to put him to death. I don't know what Judas thought was going to happen to Jesus. I mean, any sensible person wouldn't think that if I turn you over to these people that want you dead, that's going to turn out good for you. I don't know what he thought was going to happen, but he was like in shock that they wanted him dead. And so, you know, he took the money, the 30 pieces of silver that they gave him to turn over Jesus, and he said, I've sinned. I betrayed innocent blood in turning Jesus over to you. And they said, what's that to us? That's your responsibility. So Judas just took the 30 pieces of silver that they gave him to betray Jesus, and he just threw it at them in the temple, and he ran out and he hung himself for what he did. Now the chief priest picked up these coins and said, it is against the law to put this into the treasury since it's blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field and use it as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used it to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. We are continuing in Matthew chapter 27, verse 11. Meanwhile, Jesus now stood before the governor, the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, Jesus did not respond at all to defend himself. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they're bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to one of the charges they brought against him, and Pilate was amazed at this. Jesus was not trying to defend himself at all because this was God's plan for him to die to pay for our sins. He wanted to get executed to pay for our sins. He wasn't trying to get out of it. So he never defended himself no matter what they said against him, even though everything was lies. Now, it was a governor's custom at this festival, again, it was a Passover festival, to release a prisoner back to them chosen by the crowd. So at that time, there was a well-known prisoner named Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate said to them, which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah? For he knew that it was out of self-interest they had handed Jesus over to him. Pilate knew Jesus was innocent. Pilate knew Jesus did nothing wrong. Pilate knew the religious leaders just wanted Jesus dead because they're envious of him and they didn't like him, but he didn't do anything wrong. So Pilate wanted Jesus set free. So Pilate thought to himself, well, they have this custom, and I'm going to use it, where on this religious holiday, we will release one of their Jewish prisoners back to them. We'll free him. And I'll give them a choice between Jesus, who I know that a lot like because they're calling him the King of the Jews, the Messiah, and I heard he did these miracles, or Barabbas, this notorious murderer and insurrectionist that was just a violent man that people didn't like, and he was certain that people would say, release Jesus to us, set him free. And then Pilate would be, hey, okay, good, I got Jesus free. I didn't even have to do it. They did it for me. He thought this was going to free Jesus because he knew Jesus was innocent. Pilate did not want Barabbas freed because Barabbas was an insurrectionist, which means he led a rebellion against Rome, and Pilate was a Roman. He led it against, Pilate's forces. So, While Pilate was sitting in the judge's seat, his wife came to him and said, "Do not have anything to do with this innocent man, Jesus, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream I had about him." She said, "Pilate, I dreamt Jesus, an innocent man. Do not condemn him. Let him go." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas to be freed and not Jesus. So Pilate went to them for their answer. He said to the crowd, "Which of the two of you do you want me to release to you? Barabbas or Jesus?" "Barabbas," they said. "Release Barabbas." "All right, well, what do you want me to do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" They all answered, "Crucify him." Pilate was in shock. He thought, no way would they want Barabbas. They would want Jesus freed. Now they want Jesus crucified? He said, "Why? Crucify him. What crime did Jesus commit?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. And he said, "I am innocent of Jesus' blood. It is your responsibility." He said, "Look, I don't find Jesus guilty of anything. I'm not going to crucify him. If you want him crucified, that's your business. I'll give you authority to do it, but I'm washing my hands of his crucifixion because I know he's innocent. See to it yourself." And they said, "Okay, if you'll let us do it, we will crucify him." And they took him away. And when he said this, all the people answered, "Jesus' blood will be on us and on our children," because he said it's going to be your responsibility. Wow. So then Pontius Pilate released Barabbas to the people, and he had Jesus flogged, which means if you ever saw the movie The Passion of the Christ, they tied him up and they whipped him with these whips of metal and bone and all stuff, so it just ripped his skin open, and they whipped him so much his whole back split open. And after that, then they took him away to be crucified. Now we are continuing in Matthew 27, verse 27.